Then there's the visualization of things, right? Having having an object in front of you, whether it's a car, whether it's a piece of equipment, um, whether it's an environment that you're looking at, right? Again, the immersiveness, right? But really having that spatial context, right? That sense of space is something that can't really be done in, like, on a monitor. My boss told me the story about this time he was trying to mock up like an architectural, like an interior design, and his I think his designer kind of looked at it and said, "Dude, it's too small, right? It's too short." And looking at it on flat screen, it's like, that looks fine. He put on a headset and was like, "Oh yeah, it's actually really, really small, right?" It's like, the ceiling height was actually a lot shorter than he thought it was, just from seeing it on flat screen. That depth perception is actually a huge factor. Um, Yeah, and then, like, just kind of whether it's looking at a virtual environment on a flat screen or just looking at like blueprints, right? You can get a certain sense from a blueprint, like a plan view, but there's only so much you can kind of grok out of that. So one thing that Sean's kind of touched on was the whole mixed reality thing, right? Um, there's a number of headsets now that are introducing this concept. Of basically mixed reality or pass through, where the headsets themselves actually have outward facing cameras that you can view, that you can kind of that you can see their things, and there they do again all kinds of sensor fusion to stitch all of these wide angle camera views into one sort of relatively seamless view that you can kind of look around. Um, Now, the the major advantage of this versus, let's say, like a HoloLens or like a Magic Leap, is that due to the nature of the HoloLens, you're basically sort of like additively layering something on top of what you're actually seeing. Now, what this results in is something like what you see on the left, which is, if anyone sort of tried a HoloLens on, it's cool, but you're never going to get something that's fully opaque, right? Because you're literally just overlaying something on a transparent screen. And so what the mixed reality stuff like the Vario, and to a certain degree the Quest 2, is that it allows you to overlay a fully opaque image on top, or sort of fully opaque environment or object on top of a video feed, which means you're actually seeing this thing in the environment blocking things. And so what Vario did with Volvo was that they actually had somebody driving. It was very closed conditions, roadblocks, no other cars on the road, but they actually had somebody driving with a headset on that was feeding full, I think it was 4K, video, color video through to the display, and then overlaying safety information. It's like, here's a virtual moose crossing, so you need to stop, and it would actually watch this moose actually cross over and have all of the the information displays on top of that. Right. Similarly, we've got something that our labs are doing, which is this mixed reality pass through. This will be available at some point this year as a demo. Um, but essentially, this is using the character. So yeah, so examples of this stuff is like currently the Quest 2 and the Vario. I think there are a couple of others that are kind of experimenting with this as well. So we're going to look at a couple of things slightly more technical now, that will kind of give you a head start into what you might be looking for to start development. So one of the things that we've been working on internally is this interaction toolkit, this XR interaction toolkit. This actually does also handle AR stuff. It has a couple of sort of AR drop-in components. Um, but currently for VR, we've got a lot of cool things that are just basically literally almost literally drop-in prefabs or components that you can just add to your scene. Um, so I want to put on my old man hat and say that when VR was sort of not first starting out back in like the Dactyl Nightmare days, but like with the Oculus, the DK1, um, what you were doing a lot of times when you're developing for VR was figuring things out, right? Figuring out how you're going to get interactions, figuring out how you're going to do head motion, figuring out how you're not going to get your users sick, like motion sick. Um, coding your own stuff like, grab interactors, touch interactors, pointer interactors, and you're coding all that up, writing that, building your own stuff, just rolling all that. So nowadays we've got all kinds of frameworks that let you kind of just drop this stuff in, right? And all the research, well, not all, but a lot of this research has been done already, right? How are we gonna, translate your motion controller to grabbing and touching and pointing? How are we going to handle locomotion, right? For different types of people who are okay, who don't get motion sick, people who get motion sick super easily, right? So all that stuff is done. Your components are basically drop in. So the XR interaction toolkit, it's available as a package. Um, Allows you, or it provides a bunch of high level component based systems for you to create these experiences. All right, so it provides out of the box, a bunch of different locomotion interaction systems. You've got your teleport, you've got your dash, you've got your smooth locomotion where you're just using a thumbstick to smoothly move around. You've got your interaction systems like like grabbing stuff, touching stuff, working with UI. So, this is just one example where just from this, from this menu, just, add a grab interactable, um, and this will basically give you your building, your first building block, which gives you how are you going to grab it. It handles all of the hard stuff. All right, sets everything up so you just grab something, and then you can kind of tweak how you want that object to behave when it's grabbed. You've got all these events like when your controller hovers over this object or this collider, what can it do? Does it glow? Does it start pulsating? Does it run an animation? Similarly, things like your locomotion systems, right? Again, drop in. You add one of these things, and you've now got a teleport provider. You can drop in. There's also like teleport anchors and teleport areas where you can just drop those in, and this sort of handles everything, right? So you just point, teleport somewhere, and it's so easy compared to compared to when we're starting out, where everyone's kind of building their own systems and kind of figuring things out. Um, so a couple of things, slightly more technical again. When you're looking at developing VR stuff, one of the really big things is performance, right? Again, I sort of mentioned early on how early VR was really expensive to get into. It was not accessible to get into because you needed really powerful PCs and to actually even just consume. And the main reason for that is frame rate performance. There's varying numbers now. Like I think the old sort of like standard was you need to have a minimum of 90 FPS to ensure that people don't get motion sickness. This is sort of moved around a bit. The Quest was 72. I think the Quest 2 is like 80 or something like that. But they do rely on other tricks to smooth out that frame rate. And so you generally just want as high frame rate as possible, just so that you don't get this sickness. a good example, I think, was I was trying out Half-Life Alyx. Um, any change in frame rate, any significant frame change in frame rate or drop in frame rate will immediately make you sick. I think I had one moment where I was in a fairly intense situation. I was moving around a lot, and I think my PC crashed. And so I was left, as I was moving, I was left with a completely static image in front of me, and I was still moving, and I immediately had to like take the headset off and like sit down for a bit because your inner ear does a well. The VR headsets do a surprisingly good job of tricking your inner ear into feeling that motion. So you want to keep that frame rate up. We've got a few tools in the editor that are available that'll help you do that. Your profiler, your frame debugger, which lets you kind of step through your frames to figure out like which part of your frames are, which part of the draw sequence is causing, a lot of your frame rate issues. Latency is something that'll come from different things. If you're on a wired versus wireless headset, the network might contribute to that. But that really comes down to, that really refers to things like how much delay there is between moving your hand and the virtual representation moving, as well as more importantly, uh, the delay between moving your head and your virtual camera actually moving. So that plays a huge part in sort of like alleviating motion sickness.